I'm at this thicket-wide plot again at Kuduspoort. It always strikes me how amazing it really is to have all this plant biomass growing like crazy here, and then right next door it's just kind of a moonscape of degraded thicket from over browsing. You can see another patch of Spekboom over there that's been maintained, probably because it was fenced off. What I want to chat today about are thoughts on growth forms of Spekboom. So on previous videos I've described how the skirting is absolutely amazing because it traps water and it traps all the leaf litter, and there's water running down this slope will get trapped to it because of the skirt forming on the base here. But just something I've noticed about this thicket-wide plot is that it's getting really tall. So this is at eye height, so this is 1.8 meters, so it's getting up to 1.82 meters tall. And there were these rows that were left as gaps in the thicket-wide plot, so they're planted out as rows, and these gaps aren't really being closed up. We're not getting this creeping sideways. Every now and then, here's a branch, it's creeping sideways, and that's come from there, and it's rooted. And yeah, there's a classic one. There's the branch going along the ground there, and it's rooted. But why isn't it filling up all the space in between here? If we go on a little bit further, here's something that's growing sideways, and it's this is looking great. But here we've got a fantastic skirt. Why is it not growing into this into this area? It could be partly because of game, but I suspect that it's got to do with the height of these plants. So if we look here, this skirt is now in deep shade, and as the sun comes over that skirt on that side, it's getting full sunlight now. You can see my shadow here, but the sun's going to come right over me, and then this skirt's going to be in full shade. So it's not getting as much sunlight as this stuff at the top. So if you are Portulacaria afra, if you're a plant and you're doing plant economics and you've got to figure out where the best places are to get your best bang for your buck, it's going to be on these leaves up the top here, because they're going to have sun throughout the day and you can do your best photosynthesis here. So this has got some kind of implications for the ecosystem services that Spekboom offers. I've been going on about these ecosystem services in terms of water retention. So there's water retention, leaf litter retention that's going on, which is fantastic, but it's not really happening here all that much. Okay, so there's also a lot of silt in here. I have to say, I can't just say that there's not much of leaf litter. This is trapped soil runoff that's coming here. That's why it's mixed in with the leaf litter. So it's trapping. It's got a slope up there. I'm pointing up quite a steep slope that keeps on eroding into this plot. So the leaf litter layer isn't as thick as it could be, but as like it normally is very evident. I can just grab a handful of leaf litter. But I also want to argue that this branching isn't closing these gaps, and it's not as dense as it could be. Look at this. There's not much going on at the branch level. It's now growing into this upright form, and that's because it is competition for light, and so it's not. It's almost like this lower layer. Dare I use the term moribund, which is a grassland term. The term moribund is when the dead grasses impede the growth of the new grass because it's all got to do with light. So it then needs to have a good burn so that you increase the light. So I'm not saying you burn this, I'm saying something completely differently. I'm saying everything at about 1 meter's height, we come and take off here and use that for more Spekboom restoration. But you then increase the light that gets down to the skirt, and then all of this will start closing up, and then we'll really start getting, you know, more water, more soil being trapped, more leaf litter being trapped. Even here I'm a bit concerned about that water can get away from that skirt and get down and kind of walk its run its way. It's funny, water can run but it can't walk. Anyway, so again, like something like this, you can see this is north facing now over here, and you can see it's investing quite a bit in its on what's going on there. But down in the middle there, it's all just growing upright. It's not really creating this amazingly close canopy. So if we go and trim all of those at a meter, maybe even 50 centimeters, reuse the material for planting, and then we can really get we can get this kind of a skirt. You know, this is what we want. We want like 100% of that super dense skirt across the ground for the ecosystem services. So that's going to trap your water, trap your dust, trap your leaf litter, and then start creating that closed ecosystem. Yeah, so that's just the points I wanted to raise, that once your Spekboom starts growing up like this, that I think it's probably also more taxing. It's now, you know, there's a light competition that's going on. It's having to invest more in the stems, more energy in stems. We're actually, if we're wanting to invest in carbon, we want to invest in leaves, because the more leaves it can produce, the more leaf litter it produces, that then gets into the soil, and that eventually becomes, you know, a proportion of that, a small proportion of that gets conserved as soil carbon from the leaf litter. And you know, here it's having to waste a lot of time and energy in building fairly thick branches. So my thoughts with this, and what we are going to try out on this plot, is take a small section. This is all just ideas at this point. Take a small section, and we're going to trim everything in a meter, you know, maybe 5 by 5 meters, and we're going to then monitor what happens to the skirting. Does the skirt suddenly, does this suddenly get covered up because now there's more light making? You can actually just see how much shadows there are all the way up that pathway because of the tall branches. Go and take all those branches out. That suddenly becomes higher light conditions, and now you're going to get the plants are going to invest more growing sideways. So this could be a way of promoting Spekboom growth, is that we don't really want these upright forms. You know, this plant here is investing in going upright. It's doing very little of that sideways growth. That's very, very useful for Spekboom. Oh, I say that, but come look at it on this side. So over here, one branch came here, grew sideways, and it's rooted in multiple places. So one branch did that, but none of the others have. Oh, well, there's one over there, and he's starting to do, the holding the soil together, doing that. But you know, the bulk of the biomass is in this long stem. It doesn't need to be. Chop it off there. Let's promote sideways growth and reuse that for more restoration elsewhere. So you can carry on like that. I'm actually just getting to this. There's a larger gap in this plot over here, and you can just see that, you know, these are really pathetic little sideways growth. It's great, it's doing its job, but it's not covering this area. It's not like it's growing sideways. It's just growing upright. The original paper that describes this kind of lateral growth, Stuart Hill, 1992, actually says that, you know, that Spekboom is this lateral runner across the ground, that's the morphology. But here, where the herbivores have been removed, they're actually growing upright because they're trying to compete for light, and there's very little of this lateral growth coming. Remember, naturally what would be happening is that an elephant would be coming along here, and this is the perfect height for an elephant to grab this, break it off and munch on it, drop it somewhere and it could reroute, and at the same time then open up for the skirt to get going. Elephants wouldn't be interested in the skirt, too much effort to go down and browse there. And so you know, that's what would keep the system going and keep it growing sideways, I would argue. Anyway, just to leave you with those thoughts about maybe trimming your when Spekboom gets up to a certain height in the restoration plots, in your restoration, that you then start to actively trim it to promote growth. I'll just leave you with some shots of the landscape. And this amazing, I'm still such a inspiring plot, this, but it can be better. Yeah, you can see here where it's a bit shorter. You see it's for some reason it's a bit shorter here. There's more sideways growth, way more sideways growth than on the other side. You know, it's really like getting in there. You can see it, all of that has built up there through water eroding, you know, it capturing the water that's running through here. So yeah, to me, even just looking at the skirting here, in terms of where it's shorter, there's way more skirting going on. Just have a look at this plant here, multiple branches, lots of skirting going on at the bottom here, and it's just because the canopy is a bit shorter. Cool, I'll leave it there. Ciao, ciao.